The Perimeter with Adam Morrison is brought to you by our official title sponsor, Mercedes-Benz of Spokane. Experience the best or nothing at Mercedes-Benz of Spokane with Dan Crowley and his exceptional team. They're located in beautiful Liberty Lake and is a local family-owned dealership under Skee Automotive. Their staff prides itself on a personal and memorable experience from service to sales and will have you leaving the dealership feeling satisfied with a smile on your face all the way down the road. Back-to-back winners of the Best Silver Laurel Award receive invoice pricing on any new Mercedes-Benz in stock when you come in and mention the Perimeter podcast. You can check out all their available inventory at SpokaneMercedes.com, as well as stay up to date on all things Mercedes-Benz via their Facebook and Instagram pages. Call them at 509-455-9100 to schedule your Mercedes test drive today. Welcome to the Perimeter Podcast. I'm Adam Morrison.
Shooter.
I'm with Scott Keeney, a.k.a. DJ Skee, Mixtape God, Minnesota Vikings in-house game DJ, founder of Dash Radio, Skee Sports. What else you got? I know you got
Timberwolves
more.
fan.
Timberwolves fan.
The lone one.
Appreciate you having me on, man.
Of course, Gonzaga fan. You guys are stealing all our Minnesota kids. I love it.
We just got Chet Holmgren today.
Yes, shout to Chet. Shout to Jalen, my guy. You guys, what a run.
It was a good run. It was obviously we came up short. It's a little bit depressing.
Sorry,
you have to pick a scab. Sorry. Yeah, you know, but yeah, we got all the Minnesota kids, and
I love it.
How'd you get involved with Jalen real quick, just for the Gonzaga fans?
Yeah, so my boy out in Minnesota, Ryan, connected me. He'd been telling me about him for years since he was in junior high, so I've been paying attention and watching him. As you know, we don't have a ton of we have great athletes, but very few on that level. And just watching him was incredible to happen over the years. And then he actually was at a Vikings game. He introduced us, and we became cool. And I brought him on field, had him in the DJ booth. Not last season, the season before, right before. I remember him telling me he was going to choose Gonzaga too before he officially announced it. I think he had it down to his final couple ones where he's like, yeah, I'm going to go to Gonzaga. And I was like, oh, I got the homie over there. I got Adam, I got Roni, I'm really glad to see it. I mean, what a great organization and what a great school to go with. So watching him grow and then seeing that season this year and that shot this year, so happy for him.
Yeah, no, it was obviously unbelievable. And for a kid of that caliber to choose Gonzaga, it's kind of our first true one and done. We had Zach Collins before that, but for him to do that kind of elevated and to get Chet, that obviously helped the recruiting process to get Chet because they played together. I think they won 4 straight state championships in Minnesota.
Yeah, they balled out.
They balled out. Yeah.
It's so good too. He's got his head on so right because Gonzaga's not, and it doesn't have the recruiting advantage that USC does in Southern California, or the glamour that Kentucky or some of those other ones. Obviously, an incredible program. But he really believed in the opportunity that they were giving him, and he thought he would learn the most and perform the best there. So it shows a lot to turn down the palm trees and the sunshine and go somewhere that isn't traditionally, especially for like you said, a one and done. Gonzaga's known for manufacturing things, so it was
diamonds in the rough.
Yeah.
I think his decision making, because I talked to Tommy Lloyd, just took the Arizona job, and he said the biggest thing that Jalen's dad said to me is he wants to play with other good players and have a culture. And you don't hear that from top 5 picks. You know 100%. What I'm saying?
His family's so great. Shout out to his whole family. They've got their head on right, and they've done it the right way.
You can tell he's a fine young man. He gave up a lot, body wise for the program. You get to that level, you're thinking for the next opportunity.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So a lot of one and done guys are not diving on the floor, taking charges. Jalen was that guy, but it was just an interesting connection you have with Jalen and Chet. And
Gonzaga comes up so many ways. I know, LA, Minnesota, it's all these weird.
We're all connected here. Right. So, all right. Well, again, appreciate you joining.
Of course, man.
You're a man of many hats. So I kind of want to just go through your whole, career, how you got started, life growing up in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Yeah. First off, how did you get into DJing? What got you into that?
So growing up, I thought I was going to be a pro athlete. Baseball was my sport. I was pretty good at basketball, but I was like, I'm going to be a pro athlete. And, once I got into DJing and got my first, it was actually a record player. I wasn't even calling it a turntable, would be a disservice to turntables. I got a record player and bought like a turntable to kind of match up. I stole actually my dad's record player. And once I started using that, I was like, oh, this is what I'm going to do. I just kind of like, I'd always loved music, but it instantly clicked. And not from like a cocky perspective, like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. Like, I was like, no, this is what I'm going to do.
Good at it though, right?
Yeah, I was like, this is what I like. I love this. This is going to be my path. And I just kind of put that in my head and didn't doubt myself ever from that. And from there, like started off DJing locally at my high school, doing mixtapes and selling them at the shops and in the streets, ended up on the radio station out there in Minneapolis. And with a shift at, like, you know, it was like a 4 a.m. shift on Saturday nights with like 3 listeners. But still, to me, it was the funnest, you know, still probably some of my funnest experiences on air. And from that, I was able to network and get connected to the CEO of Loud Records, which was Steve Rifkin. Loud, of course, at the time was maybe the most iconic hip-hop label. Wu-Tang Clan, Mobb Deep, Exhibit, Big Pun.
Wow.
Like all of the great, like underground mainstream hip-hop guys, if that makes sense. And Steve is a legend in his own regard for what he's done and kind of pioneered on the marketing side. He invented street teams and did all this corporate work for all these brands. So I connected with Steve. This is around the time Napster was out. So the whole music industry was under fire by that.
I love Napster, by the way.
That's great, right? We all did. So I'm this kid that's like living this life and very savvy on the internet and with technology. Steve's this old, not old, he was still, you know, I don't want to say old, that's not, he's in late 30s, 40s, like, you know, and running the biggest hip hop label in the world. But he didn't know how to work email at the time, right? And his business is being revolutionized.
That's funny to say.
Yeah, I taught him how to do email. I remember that. So shout out to whatever Steve's first, I think it was an AOL one we set him up with. But
awesome. He
didn't even know how to use his Sony or Universal ones at the time. But you know, he brought me on, and to his credit, I was always like, wait, why would he? Anyway, sorry, I was entrepreneurial. So I was selling. I never worked a real job. And in high school, all my friends would work at Best Buy or Target. So I'd slide them $20 to tell me when the new shipments of PlayStations, PS2s or Xboxes were coming in.
Oh, that's amazing.
Go buy them and sell them for double the money on eBay. So that was my hustle. And
it's awesome.
I got connected with Stretch Armstrong, a legendary DJ. Happened to be meeting with Steve. Steve needed a PS2 for his son for Christmas. Stretch is like, this kid in Minneapolis, it's like kind of interning and helping me out that I know that he'll have it. Like, talk to him. And stayed in touch with Steve, built a rapport with him. A few months later, sent him whole outline on what I thought he was doing wrong with his label. At the time, my dream would have been to launch a street team in Minneapolis so I could get a free Wu-Tang Clan shirt or a free Exhibit shirt. And I would have been the happiest kid in the world. That was like literally my dream when I sent this. I'm like, damn, maybe I can get some free gear or something.
There you go.
He loved it so much, he offered me a job and figured a way to graduate high school early and ended up working for him. But it was because I was on the cutting edge of like understanding technology and music, and there was a need for him for that because this whole, like the business was changing drastically, and he always had the foresight to see the future. So he brought me in as he kind of needed somebody that was of that next generation. The same way that we're seeing kids now with TikTok and Roblox and all these other platforms. He brought me out and the rest, luckily, it worked out for me.
Yeah. So that's amazing, by the way, that you were hustling PlayStations and stuff. Like, that's awesome. Like, was it only $20 for a cut, or did you guys percentage?
I'd slide off my guys like $20. Tell me when the shipments come in, and then I'd sell them. You know, I'd make $100-$200 on each one or whatever. It's
awesome, man. No, there's obviously a market, especially when eBay was so new back then.
Man.
Like,
so I've had my eBay account for so long and have been onto that. And after that, I was reselling shoes. So it's like another, like all these things that I've just fallen in love with. That's how I'd pay for my shoes. I'd buy 3 pairs, sell 2, keep 1.
That's crazy. So you moved to LA at 17? Like,
yeah, I got the job. I was actually in high school, and I remember he offered me the job. Steve flew me out to New York one day. Actually, to tell you the long story, since we're here and we got some time, and it's you. First time he flew me out, I was supposed to meet with him. I ditched high school for the day, flew out in the morning from Minneapolis to New York. Then he ends up canceling once I'm there. He's like, I got meetings. And for me, I'm like a kid. Like, I don't understand that. Like, that's my whole life. So I'm like heartbroken and like, damn, is this done? But I didn't I let it get me down, but I didn't get it to me. He's like, sorry, blah, blah, blah. Let's do it again. 2 weeks again. He's like, come back in 2 weeks. I'm like, all right, whatever. Like, so I do it. And like, I was kind of discouraged at the time, but I was like, all right, let's go through this. Like, he's the CEO of a label. Who am I? Like, I get it. Like, there's different levels, and something happening is much more important over there than probably meeting with me. But then he moved out. He's like, yeah, I want you to come work for me. And I didn't really know what he wanted. I was like, oh wow, like, all right, let's do this. So I was, luckily I was already a little ahead in high school and figured a way, and this is like when online schooling first started, so I kind of hacked my way. I figured they had just approved it from like the school board. That's how new it was. So I was able to take like some online classes and stuff and figure a way to graduate early.
Early, that's awesome.
Yeah, and had never been to, I was originally going to move to New York. 9/11 happened, so Steve was bi-coastal, and he's like, come move to LA because that's where his family was based, and he wanted to spend more time here. And drove a U-Haul across the country.
What'd your parents think about that? Like, was it a tough battle, or were they like, go get him, kid? And
luckily, my parents have always really encouraged me, which I think is important, right? Like, and I think it's so important to have people that encourage you, and to realize too, like, they probably thought it wasn't likely to work out long term, right?
Be like, he'll be back. Yeah, that makes sense.
And like go get those experiences because those things are there. But like conversely, if I waited, it's like. Great analogy. I'm talking to you, right? Like if I waited 4 years and did that, would that have opportunity presented itself? No, I might not have been I look at myself as almost like I got drafted out of high school and had this great opportunity. So who knows? Could it have been there? Maybe. Would it have, but the likelihood was like, you got to jump on opportunities. That's one of the key things that I've learned in life is not just, setting yourself up to have them, but recognizing and jumping in the door and not being scared.
If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. Sugar-free, right?
Exactly. Oh, you got the quotes.
Oh, you already know he's one of my all-time favorites. So if there's
ever
a
Adam
chance,
is so G.
If there's ever a chance I can get around sugar-free, like it's,
I think
it'd be over for me.
Sugar-free, we're gonna talk.
Can you make that happen for me one time?
We can make this happen.
Tightest pea spitter on the West Coast.
I love it. Adam is so gangster. You guys don't even know how G this guy is.
Oh man, I love sugar-free. So anyway, all right. Like when you were in LA, like did you, obviously you're working for Rifkin. Were you just DJing on the side, like at clubs or like?
Yeah, so I'd always like DJing was my foundation, but when I moved out here, it wasn't to be. He didn't hire me to be a DJ.
You were marketing.
Yeah, he hired me, and he didn't even. Like, it's so funny. So knowing Steve, if anybody knows Steve, he's kind of all over the place, but he understands talent for some reason. Everybody that comes through his circle, like artists, there's been so many executives in this music business that made it. And I remember my first day, he just sat me down and was like, "All right, you know what to do?" And I was like, "Yeah," and I had no idea. Yeah. So I just kind of like made my own. Yeah, and you just like make it happen. So Steve didn't really have a new thing. He didn't really know what he wanted to do with me. He's like, I just want somebody that's young and that's in the mix, and this guy has decent ideas. So like, let's throw him out there and see what happens. So I kind of had to still like make it from there. So I was always DJing, but it was great because the challenge with talent, right, is that you don't always understand the business side. Like I'll talk to an artist and I'll be like, yeah, just I'll tweet it and I'll pay me $1 million. I'll post something about it. It's like,
it doesn't work that way, right?
ROI doesn't work that way. It's about building long-term relationships. So I was able to really dig in, and this is the age of 17, 18, like learn the industry, not only from the music side, but from the marketing side. Working with big brands. The first client that I brought in was T-Mobile, and we did the Sidekick.
That's so awesome. And that brings back so many memories for me because that was college era time for me. The Pac-Man thing. Do you still have? If you still have a Sidekick, oh
we got one. We got one on the wall over there.
Oh my god! I need to Instagram live that later, man.
Hell yeah, dude.
Okay, good. Sorry, go ahead, man.
No, that was so like working on that industry side. So I actually made a lot of the connections and relationships I had in the industry through marketing through working with brands like Adidas, Nike, doing all these things. I was always DJing, but my DJ career didn't blow up until a little later on. Even though DJing is kind of what got me out here, I was working on the industry side of things first, and that gave me, I think, such a great foundation that you see. Like it worked out perfectly because I was able to take that knowledge that I had and apply it to my brand and building a real business. And that's what inevitably led me to, all the different things that I've done and to being here today.
So when you first came out, were you like considered an intern? Was he paying you salary? Like how were you surviving as a 17-year-old? You know what I'm saying? Like were you grinding? Like obviously, but was he paying you or something?
Yeah, he paid me, but I mean it was basically I paid like an intern, right? Like minimum wage and stuff. But it was like the opportunity was too good to pass.
So of course you're not worried about money, but I'm just saying.
But no, 100%. It's tough in LA, right?
Yeah,
like so, exactly. I was living with 2 other people, and still selling shoes on the side and hustling from that. And it was funny. I met a lot of artists like Fat Joe and all these guys. I started selling them all their shoes early on. So when you see like Fat Joe on Cribs or showcasing his shoes, half of those were coming from me because I was
just so awesome.
But I was just doing things that like people weren't up on the internet sites, and I was ordering like exclusive Air Force One colors from Europe that was
nobody knew about.
Easy. Yeah, and just like I just had that knowledge, so I was able to kind of import them, and that's how I was kind of hustling on on the side by doing that. But yeah, it was tough. And, you know, in terms of title, Steve didn't really he was like, yeah, whatever. I think on my business card, we put like marketing executive, but it didn't really, he didn't really have titles. He was just like, do your thing. And that was great. You know, it was,
gave you the freedom.
Yeah. There's certain people, and that's the way I work better within, you know, when I'm able to go out and find things and figure out how to make it happen versus some people really need boundaries to stay in. I'm not one of those people. So for my type of personality and kind of the way that I work, it was the best scenario to be in. So,
okay, we're gonna get into like your mixtape stuff and kind of your music. So 2005, you produced the 300 bars and running for the game, right?
It's so long ago. I can't believe it's 2005.
So,
damn.
That was, you know, like 14-minute long beef song, right? With 50 Cent. Like, because I remember the Stop Snitch and Stop Lying. That was college for me.
Yeah, wow.
So, like, I've always wanted to know, like, you produced the mixtape, and this was like a legitimate beef, right? It wasn't just a, it was personal.
No, people died in that, like, legitimately.
Okay, so did you ever feel like you were picking a side just because you produced the mixtape? Like, I've always wanted to know the people on the 100%. Periphery. Obviously, you had a big role in it, but did you ever feel like frightened or just odd to be mixed into that stuff? Because it gets personal and then it gets
100%, man. I mean, and it was different because I'd known Game and 50 for a while from all of that. Like I'd watched 50's growth. We were doing stuff. We did a lot with him, and like if you see, like you'll see the Sidekick in the 21 Questions video. That was the first video. It starts off with the color Sidekick, so that was me on set doing those things. I'd known Game longer than I even knew 50. I knew Game before he was even signed to G Unit when he was just had the Dre deal, and I met him when I still worked for Steve way back in the day. So I'd known Game actually longer than 50, even though 50 came up earlier than that, and we'd always clicked and just became friends and associates. And I was always hooking Game up early on because I believed in his talent. As soon as I heard it, I was like, wow, this kid's like one of the most incredible lyricists.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ever. So, but we've done a lot of work with 50. So, and I was playing, I was cool with both sides when the beef first started, right? And I was still at this point, I had left Steve, but I had my own marketing agency and I had a studio. And at that point I was doing a little more DJing. I was doing like a little show on Sirius. I was doing like a couple like small events, but I hadn't made it, right? Like I was we did a T-Mobile Sidekick mixtape, so I'd put like Game on it and did these things. So I was starting to like get my name out there, but it wasn't known. I hadn't made it as a DJ. It was my side project. I still had a full-time job in essence. And I remember when the whole beef happened, meeting Game afterwards and talking through it, like right after there was a shooting in New York at a radio station and one of Game's guys got shot, and I thought he'd show up with like 100 people, and I think I was giving him a sidekick or something. He met with me solo after and saw all those things. But the turning point for me was when my studio was on Melrose at the time, and the office and studio, I had like a one studio room in there. And I met Game. He was at I think it was the Ed Hardy store, which was like, it was at the time, 2005, one of the cooler brands.
Yeah,
right?
No, I had an Ed Hardy shirt, probably still do.
I actually didn't. I actually never really liked it. I don't think you could ever, I think you, like, and I admit if I did, I don't think I ever did, but he was there, he was picking up some clothes, and this was during the whole beef, and I was like, oh, what's going on? And they'd made peace. There was a peace treaty at this time. Like literally, like Al Sharpton had stepped in. They were like, yo, no breaking up the Beatles, Jimmy Iovine said. So they were cool, but 50 was throwing all these shots at Game, so Game felt like he had to come back at him. And he's like, I'm going to come back at him and diss him. And I was like, wait, what? He was like, yeah. So he played me. He gave me a disc that was the first like 3 or 4 minutes of 300 bars, but it was all over one beat. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to go 300 bars. Because he had this series. He'd done 100 bars, 200 bars. So he's like, I'm going to do 300 bars, which I'm like, it's only fucking 15 minutes long. Like, that's a lot of rapping. And it was over one beat. And it's the KRS-One, the Love's Gonna Get You, the BDP beat, which is great, incredible track. But it's like, you can't listen to that shit for 15 minutes. Dude. Like, it was too much. So I had the idea. I was just like, hey, I want to help you out as a friend. Like, I went in my studio and like did a Jackin' for Beats thing and produced some stuff together. And I emailed it to him. I was like, yo, check your email. I remember I sent him a two-way or a text on his Sidekick, and I just was like, hey, this is just some advice. Like, I think this will be cool and do that. I didn't expect to do that. Then he called me next thing, like after I sent it, like 5 minutes later, he's like, yo, I'm on the way. I'm like,
here we go.
It's like, we're going to record this. I'm like, all right, cool. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to record this song. So anyways, get it together. He comes in the studio, and then I'm just like, we're like riffing, and it's like in real time. He's like, he lays some bars, and then I mix a beat in. And one of my favorite things about that song is that when he mentions something, especially Game, like his rap style, he name drops a lot, right? Yeah. So every time he says an artist name or says allude to something, like I'll mix in the background of that. So there's so many like samples in that layer, and that's why you can't hear it on Spotify. There's no clearance of it. So
yeah, I've always wanted to know, like with the mixtapes, like there's so much sampling. Like how do you
can't just put none of that, and that's why and that's what's so sad. Like a lot of that era just doesn't exist because
it's pretty much
it's still underground. It was underground then, but now it's even more so. But we sat in the studio for 2 days straight and ended up making this record. And at the end of it, I was like, oh wow, damn! Like I just produced this. This is fun. Like and at the time I'm like, all right, I didn't have any expectations, but Game was like, no, I'm putting you on the mixtape. I'm like, what? Like I didn't really expect that. But I'd been there working, and then we recorded a couple other records that there's a whole, you know what it is, Volume 3 and mixtape with a bunch of other records. And he threw my name on it, and I was like, I realized it then too. It was one of those other moments like, oh shit, like my life is, if I do this, like my life is going to change.
Absolutely.
So like I realized like, and for being a DJ, there's very few opportunities that you have to get on. And this is before DJs like were getting paid crazy in Vegas.
Yeah. Before like the Calvin Harris and all that stuff.
Like, that didn't exist. So
Tiesto, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Like mixtapes were the only way, and it was really being associated with an artist. And so it's like a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I'd really worked on that. And like, I'd known Game for a long time. I loved that record. I personally didn't have any beef with 50. I understood Game's points from that, but at the same time too, like 50 had Who Kid, and Who Kid's my guy. I'd known Who Kid forever, and like I never personally said anything or did any of that, but of course, like I was associated and took that side, and I had to make that risk. Like, look, do I want to just stay back and tell them to take my name off of it and be scared and not do that, and or do I
get
just
the credit that you deserve?
Yeah, or I'm like, do I embrace it and leverage this and like. It is what it is at a certain point. And like, you really like, he like 50's not going to be happy and all those things. And, I said like, look, I'm going to do myself. I treat myself as a producer for that the same way that other ones do. If people take it the wrong way, kind of it is what it is, but I'm not scared. And I'm not out here claiming to be a gangbanger and like calling out for you. I'm not going to go shoot and do any of those things. If somebody comes after me, like, you're going to look weak if you're going after like the white boy in the crew, right? Like that's not a gangbanger. That's
skinny white
clearly
boy in the backside.
Not that, right? But at the same time too, I'm going to ride with people that are loyal for me and stay true to myself. And that's how I've always been able to walk between worlds. So, that night was crazy. And I remember Game had to fly to New York. He was going to do some show. The world hadn't heard it. This is like, you couldn't just, MySpace was around and coming up, but it wasn't like instant. And I remember making a clean version, going to Power 106 in the morning, big boy show, and premiering it. That 15-minute long diss record playing on radio against the biggest artist in the time. Like, I mean, I so wish that like Twitter and all these social networks were around then.
Insane. Are you kidding me? Like,
and especially how clever Game was with like the skits and all the things that he had. So we wrote out and took sides, and there were definitely people in their feelings, and definitely, it didn't make me friends with everybody. But in retrospect, like I stayed true to myself. I worked with music that, I produced stuff that I thought was dope, but I never was out there like claiming to gangbang and have those beefs. I'm just, the producer and the guy in there. I'm not like, going to step down and back down and hide from that stuff. But the end of the day, like it's music, and it was an opportunity for me to get out there as a DJ and make a career out of something that I love. And I realized early on too that I didn't want to be just known as that mixtape person or as Games DJ or something. And no disrespect to anybody that's just a DJ for one artist or any artist, but I had such a diverse musical taste. I was like, I had a whole plan at that point. I'm like, all right, I'm going to use this as my
you're multi-talented, so you wanted
in the door.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if this is the chance that I get to showcase, that I can showcase everything else on, like that opportunity might not ever come into my lifetime. And if I don't do this right now and don't accept it, and it was tough too. It was probably it would have been easier to walk away and be quiet, like, oh, don't put my name on it, but then I would have been like still on the industry side, and I wouldn't have been able to build all the things that I've done. And you have to take a risk. And looking back and at all the crazy times, I mean, at the time I'm like 20 years old. And
that beef was real, man. It was crazy.
Like, would I go through that now? Hell no. It's just not worth it. Like looking back, I'm like, oh God, why did I do that? Why was it stupid? Like walking in the studio at our office, there's guns laid out everywhere. Like,
oh God.
There was literally like, I mean, you guys can look it up. It's all public record and see like there's people that died as a part of that beef. And being in the mix, there were moments like I would drive and luckily there's some real street guys in there that taught me and that looked out for me and that helped me out and showed me like how to move. Like I remember driving driving the longer ways, driving in the middle lane. So if somebody was to come to you from the right, you'd always have to have enough room in front of a car so somebody couldn't sneak up with you. So
wild, man.
Yeah. So I was not ignorant to the risks out there. I wouldn't do it again. man. But at the time, like, look, you're young and you're dumb and you do those things.
It's crazy. I appreciate.
But it worked out.
Appreciate you sharing that, man. That's wild. Like for real to even think about, because that was my era, college. So I remember like Stop Snitch, Stop Lying, and like these guys like hated each other.
Bro, we went out there like that stuff was real.
Hated each other.
Man, and we had like when we'd go to New York, we'd land and the police would follow us. There was a hip hop cops unit, and they'd literally like follow us because they didn't want anything to happen on that watch. So they'd try to shadow you to prevent anything from happening. But so many crazy stories and so many things, and it worked out. Like, you know, I think that beef is kind of like all things. The time is
your time heals all. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, there's issues on both sides. I don't know if they'll ever be best friends.
You don't have to be though.
Yeah, they've gotten through with me. You know, me and Hookid have worked on a ton of projects since then. That's my guy. Like, you know, I don't have any beef or any problem with anybody. I happen to be in it, and it's like, look, you've got to, you know, you're on a side, but that wasn't my beef. I was just helping amplify and tell that story.
Okay, go for one West Coast legend to the other. Like at around the same time, you kind of discovered or like. Kendrick Lamar, right?
So Kendrick, I met the same time we did that 300 bars mixtape, that whole, you know what it is, volume 3 mixtape, right around then. So Top Dog was big in the streets, a big street guy, TDE, and he had another artist that he was pushing called J-Rock. Shout out to J-Rock, who had just signed to Warner Brothers. And Game at the time was the West Coast. Like he was of course there's like Dre, who's almost untouchable.
Yeah, untouchable. Yeah.
There's like Snoop and like, and when I say that, like exhibit like all these legends, but in terms of new West Coast, like it was Game and not really anybody else. So everybody was coming to him. And so of course Game had that street relationship with him. And J-Rock was an incredible artist. He was on Warner, and they brought this other kid that they had. The second kid to come behind J-Rock was this kid K-Dot. So I remember he brought into the I'll never forget. They still have a video, I'm sure, of it somewhere. He's freestyling in the hallway to the studio. This kid just raps for 15 minutes long straight. And I'm like, holy shit. Like, this kid is incredible. And they're like, what do you think of him? I'm like, well, he can rap great, but can he ever make a record? Can he make a song? I'm like, if we can learn how to do that, he'll be all right. And he ended up being all right. But yeah, did his, connected with those guys, did a bunch of mixtapes with J-Rock, did Kendrick's first mixtape when he was going by K-Dot. And it worked, watching his kind of movement was just incredible.
Do you think Kendrick Lamar is like on the Tupac level now? Like as far as like,
I think so.
Like socially, his music's always... You got a social aspect behind it, but then you can also make like party stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like
100%.
I think so too. And I grew up on
analogy.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Pac to me is like even if you don't look at him as the greatest, rapper, having the best catalog, he has so many records. Just that, like nobody had that charisma. Nobody had that. And like there's Pac, and there's nobody that really compares. So I don't want to say that Kendrick is Pac, but he's his own version, and he's much different. He's much quieter, more humble. He's made. He said a lot of different things, but in that same vein, yes, in terms of impact, absolutely.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think it's, you get to, like I said, the social aspect of it and the message behind his music, both of theirs. There's actually a meaning behind it. You know what I'm saying? Instead of just some of the stuff you hear today, and I'm not a get off my lawn type of guy, but some of it just doesn't have no meaning behind it. And so I think Kendrick's this similar. So
you can't say that about Kendrick. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to go one more rap reference in this.
Go.
How was your time with Nipsey, man? And I'm not trying to...
Nah, you're good.
Full scabs, man. You know what I'm saying? Man. But his message was fantastic, too. His message to me was stack your bread the right way. You know what I'm saying? Improve yourself and your community. Don't waste your money on stupid shit. Not a lot of guys say that anymore. You know what I'm saying? So I knew you had a relationship with him, did a lot of work with him early in his career. If you don't mind, man,
of course,
talk about that a little bit.
I appreciate it. R.I.P. to Nipsey, and he's been one of the biggest inspirations of my life, even since he's passed away. I met Nip when he was Raw, when I was doing all the Game mixtapes. So at that point, I'd worked my way up to becoming like the mixtape, West Coast mixtape DJ, and the guy, like if you go to the South, you go to Drama. If you go to the East Coast, you go to Who Kid or Flex or Clue or one of those guys, Green Lantern. Come to the West Coast, it was me. So I was getting that inbound and almost that deal flow, right? From all of the, in investor terms, in terms of all of this, this great talent. And I remember his manager, Johnny Shipes, and Steve LaBelle hit me up, and he was working with Big U, and they had me come to the studio. And I remember pulling up to a studio, I think it was on La Brea. And there was like 30, Crips in there, blah, blah, blah. So we'd smoke Nipsey and talking to Nipsey, and he was raw. I was like, damn, that's raw and rough. But there was something different about him. You could tell that was the environment that he's from. So that's what he knew, right? Mm-hmm. That's what he grew up on. And all you know is the way that you everything about us is based on our environment, how we grow, how we live, how we dress, right? And he hadn't seen anything else like that, but you could tell he wanted more than that. He didn't want to be just that. He was always so well thought out, and had his own ideas and plan and message always in place. So we ended up teaming up and doing the Bullets Ain't Got No Name mixtape series, which was his kind of first entry into the mainstream, his first real mixtapes with, Hustle in the House. Even to this day, it's so random. We were putting together something, and if you listen to Hustle in the House on Spotify, it'll have my drops all over it for a lot of them, which is weird. But we connected then and always stayed close. He was on a lot of those game mixtapes and just kind of being in that same circle of me being like this West Coast DJ, he being that like next guy. We were actually supposed to do a lot more. He was signed to Epic Records. And I remember, I'll never forget this day. I had moved into a new studio in Robertson and in Beverlywood in LA. And was meeting with the label Epic and Nip, and we were going to do a whole project and help him out. We'd been doing all these music videos and things. And then Michael Jackson died. And they were all like, oh, we've got to leave this meeting because Michael Jackson was signed to Epic, Sony's same record label. Yeah. And then it derailed his project. Like the timing was just bad. He was about to come out and do this big campaign, so it screwed him. He ended up leaving the label. We'd always stayed close. And then his photographer, who I'd known for years, Jorge, had hit me up and was like, hey, I think you guys should talk. There's a lot more that we should do. So we ended up meeting. I remember going down, and he just opened up a brand new studio in downtown LA. He was about to drop the TMC mixtape. The Marathon was just out. And I remember sitting with him and him telling me what his vision was. And he knew exactly what he wanted to do, exactly what he was going to do to get there. Told me all the research and stats and was pulling out market data. And this was a guy that wasn't educated on how to properly I guess the formal ways of doing things, right? I don't want to say proper because he did it better than people with deep educations, but he had a whole plan and he had just figured this out himself. He didn't have mentors or people that had taught him this. He was self-educated on that, and he was so clear on his vision of what he wanted to do. We ended up teaming up, and for me, I was very clear at the time. I was like, look, I don't want to do artist management. I don't want to chase people down. Like it's a headache, right? Like I'm not that's not of any interest to me. And he's like, no, I have a team. I have the infrastructure in place. I want to partner with you. We can work it out from I want you to manage me, but I want you to help me on this business side. I had written an article that he had really loved that was about Drake, and it was in XXL. It appeared in XXL, where I talked about damn, Drake could have been the first person to really do it. He didn't need a label. It was this whole thing and being independent, betting on yourself, and Drake obviously is wildly successful. So and it wasn't going against him, but I was just like, damn, this could have happened. And Nip really respected and loved that. And it's like everything that you said in there is what I want to do. You have kind of the corporate connections. You understand how to build that on the business side. And we have the same independent mentality. I never really had agents or anything. I've always pretty much done anything independently, even though I'm a DJ. I was never signed to a label, never a major management company. It's just
you handle your own shit. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's with CAA for a year or two. And then I was just it just didn't
work.
It's look, I'm not Brad Pitt. And for me, I was like, if
one of my good friends works for CAA that I'm gonna have on the show. That's funny. Anyway.
And look, we've done business, but I was like, it didn't make sense for me. And I'm I move a little differently and can handle my own things. So we had that same vision and alignment, and decided to team up. And in essence, we served as management, but kind of a pseudo label. We were shooting all his videos and controlling his visuals. We were putting out his whole plans. We were working on things. And what I took away from Nip, he knew exactly what he wanted to do. We were there. I don't want to take any credit for it. We were there to just help him execute his vision, right? And make the right connections. And what I'll never forget, what I'll take away from Nip forever is how it really is a marathon in so many ways. And of course, his slogan is "The Marathon Continues," TMC. And what that means to me is there were opportunities for him to get shortcuts. There was a major artist that wanted to sign him, and that I actually thought, I was like, just do the deal. Even if it's a 2-album deal, it'll accelerate you and get you to where you were. He never wanted to do that. And he was always about doing it on his own, doing it his own way, surrounding himself with others that could help amplify his message, but also empowering his own homies and his whole crew to grow and learn from him. He didn't want to have somebody that he grew up with, just
hanger-ons,
manage
guys
them,
like that.
But he wanted them to learn so they could
so they can do their own shit. Yeah.
And so they could do that and learn from the best. So I mean, he was so strategic with how he thought that out. But he turned down like $1 million deals that would have got him a lot of success at the time not to do that. And it didn't really click to me even until after he passed how big he was, right? Like if you look statistically, not in terms of sales, stream numbers, like not anywhere near a lot of other artists that are there, but the impact and message and what happened in Los Angeles, like I think that was, I mean, he had arguably the same impact. I'm going to go as far as say is like what, like I wasn't in LA when Tupac passed away, but I mean, the guy had a 27-mile procession, Staples Center funeral, like,
wow. I didn't even know that.
Like it was like Nip and Kobe were very much the same. Not like as you know, like when that happened, it really felt the same. He was like the streets poet, the one that we all wanted to win, one that was from that.
Everybody's rooting for him. Yeah.
Yeah, that was about the right things and not about the shortcuts. He had so many opportunities in his career to take a shortcut and to be noticed, but he was about that marathon, and that paid off. And that's why I think he's going to go down as one of the most impactful artists of all time, even though his sales or like stats on paper wouldn't necessarily reflect that. He'll have far bigger impact than a lot of others. And he really, like, even through his passing, he's encouraged me, like, follow your own path. Don't worry about that stuff. Do you, and it'll all work out in the end. And that legacy is something that can't be bought. Anybody can get a hit record and stuff, but you can't build a legacy like that. And what he did was so inspiring.
Appreciate that, Scott. You didn't have to share all that for real, man, because I didn't, I wanted to bring that up because you worked with West Coast legends, but I know that
it's important.
You guys were close together, so I appreciate you sharing that and being real with it. And,
that's what we're here for, and that's anything for you. But like that's what's important, that his legacy carries on. And like I really learned, and for me in my life, I'm like, all right, let's not take the shortcuts. Let's do this. And like again, there was deals I was encouraging him to take that he turned down, and right, like. He did it his way, like, and it worked out.
Well, his message was just so positive. Like I said earlier, it's like he was all about the community. It was about, like you said, doing it his way, but it wasn't the glitz and glamour bullshit. It was like, stack your shit, do it the right way, investments. Like I saw one interview with him. He was like, guys, like, what's the first thing you buy? He's like, property. Yeah. And the guy looked at him funny, but it was like, you never hear rappers talk about that. But he's like, I'm going to want to buy property, something that's going to recoup my investment, keep making me money. And like the dude almost fell out of the chair standing up, but it was like, this guy has a legit message, and 100%. So.
And he wanted to learn, like he was always sharing books and knowledge and insight. And I still have so many books from him for that. And he was just such a real guy,
Oh, I appreciate it again, sharing that. So let's segue into Dash Radio.
Yeah.
Founded in 2014.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. Like, can you just break down like what's your guys' vision here and the platform and everything? Because I was lucky enough, you gave me an opportunity to be involved early, and I always appreciate it. But what you guys done here in 7 years, 6-7 years is wild.
I appreciate it, man. I mean, if you look at radio, it's really the foundation of everything that I do. And if you look at kind of my skill set, it's always been identifying trends or talent early on, whether that's even things like the way I got my job was being on the internet and ahead of it with new technology. I got known for breaking all these artists and being first to introduce the world to
you Post
Kendrick,
Malone,
Post, etc. Right, Gaga. So when it came, there was an opportunity. I built an incredible career at radio, starting from a small community station in Minneapolis, as I mentioned, doing a 4 a.m. shift on Saturday nights, to working my way up, being on Sirius XM where I was for 10 years, being at iHeart and on Kiss FM out here for 6 or 7 years, and in essence the biggest radio station in the country, and having this incredible platform and helping us launch that iHeart brand. We were Clear Channel before that, and moved to iHeart. But being there, I just realized I was like, this like AM FM radio, I did not see a tremendous future for it. I thought it was inevitable that it would be replaced by something digital. When I looked at the business model of it, I was like, all right, AM FM had this moat, because to buy a signal, if you wanted a station, and cost you hundreds of millions of dollars in markets like LA. And all that's going away with the internet. It's all going to be an app. In your phone, your car is going to be an app. So I was like, all right, we have the opportunity to build something to, in essence, not replace radio, but be the evolution of where that place that took in the market. And what radio has been great at is still today is the number one source for artists to be discovered. If you want to have a huge hit record, you need to be on radio. And it's a place for like lean back listening. You hop in your car, you don't want to think about it. You just hit play and go. So we wanted to build a product where at the time everybody in the digital era was focused on streaming, Spotify, Apple, and we didn't want to compete or touch that. That's the evolution of the music transaction. It used to be over time you'd buy a tape, vinyl, CD, MP3. Now you pay $10 a month and you can get whatever you want. And radio hasn't really evolved like that. And we thought that there was just a tremendous opportunity to build a brand with radio being the first product, but really becoming almost like the MTV for that next generation. And that's where the idea for Dash was born. And over that time, we've evolved into, in essence, where we are now, which is, radio being one of our core products, but we're really focused on, the next generation, how we power music across Web 3.0, across the Metaverse, across gaming and all these next generation platforms. We, unfortunately, timing wise, had just opened this flagship facility that we're in right now, this 25,000 square foot space on Hollywood and Vine. And that opened in February of 2020. Of course, the pandemic hit in March. So the timing was less fortunate, but it forced us to really double down in kind of the gaming sector. And we found that, we have
a lot of stuff with Twitch and whatnot.
Yeah, we have the ability, there's a lot of great things that we've been working on behind the scenes. And it also accelerated the adoption of a lot of digital products and digital trends. And we think that those things were on track to happen anyways, but COVID really accelerated that. So it really, really prioritized us to focus on, kind of finding this unique sweet spot for us. And I think that we're just in such this incredible position to continue to grow. And what we built and kind of have the radio product now, which has become the biggest all original digital radio platform. We have 80 stations, 400 DJs. We've broken on Dash, first place, Cardi B, Post Malone, Billie Eilish, we've had a roster of people there, and that was us doing it in a small space. Now we have this space, and as we expand into, I think we are, and you're starting to see it with what creators are doing with NFTs. You're starting to see it with games like what Fortnite's doing in essence of, it's very early glimpses of the metaverse. You're going to see, Apple is basically betting the whole company now on AR. So there's going to be an entirely new way that music and content is consumed and that creators can make products in this next generation of technology that I think is the biggest opportunity that I'll ever see in my lifetime for music and entertainment. And we're right at the forefront of that. And we happen to have the great product, the rights, the facilities, all these different things in place. So we're super excited and have a lot of crazy things in our kind of laboratory behind the scenes coming soon.
Yeah, no, Dash has been, like I said, the growth. You first invited me here. It was after Kobe's deal. Yeah. And I saw it, and it was just finishing it, but obviously the pandemic, but the space is so beautiful, and you really got so many cool stuff going on in here, and you guys are ripping and roaring. How many monthly users do you think you guys rip?
We're like 15 million people reaching monthly right now, crazy, and it's growing. But we're really excited about some of these games and developments. We have a big project launching in June that you guys will see. I mean, for us, if you look at the way that next generation consumes content, it's all in gaming. I mean, I'm a big believer in the metaverse and kind of what's coming. You see the early iterations with Fortnite, with Decentraland, with some of these other platforms.
Sorry to cut you off. When you mean metaverse, are you talking about
Ready Player One?
Well, is it like Travis Scott, the concert he did, and is that the metaverse?
That's an early look into it. So the metaverse is basically like a digital recreation of the real world, and long term. I could sit here all day and speak futuristic thinking. So I'm thinking that the analog and digital worlds, especially with AR, are going to merge, but you're going to be able to take advantage of digital technology to do things that you can't in the real world. And I think that, if you look at the way kids consume content, they're not watching TV, they're not listening to radio, they're not even listening to their phones, right? They're on Roblox, they're in Fortnite, they're playing games designed in Unreal Engine, they're, experiencing things and interacting with their peers in a different environment. If you look at people playing Call of Duty all night, half the time is spent in the lobby and just interacting with friends. It's not even about the game is almost secondarily.
Yeah.
And you're going to see, and Epic's made they just raised, more billions of dollars that came out in the news to in essence build this open metaverse. And I think that the trends are very much pointing towards there being these digital worlds. I mean, you think Ready Player One, you think Second Life. There's been a lot of early iterations, but it's coming and it's coming fast. And I was talking with somebody from Niantic, which makes Pokemon Go and Harry Potter games earlier today. And it's that's the perfect example of utilizing technology to take the real world, but enhance it. And I think that what you saw in the pandemic was a lot of people just try to videotape me doing a stream. And we started off doing that, but we quickly learned wow, the real opportunity is to let's take advantage of technology and do things that you can't do in an analog world that we can do digitally. So you'll see us doing a lot of really cool things based on kind of our radio product and the fact that we're just creating so much content. It plays so well into kind of creating a persistent music environment in that world.
Yeah, that was great. No, that was great. No, I'm not. That was fantastic. And like I said, you gave me an opportunity to be with Dash. I've always appreciated that. I appreciate
you. You've always shown love, Adam.
So it's like anytime I come here, it's always like we're ripping and roaring. I'm always just like, yes, you know what I mean? Like, keep going, Skee, get them going.
We're pushing, man. I mean, look, we're trying to pay. We're not trying to do anything that's expected. We really want to be forward thinking, and there's just such a massive opportunity right now. And you just see, like, on another note, like what NFTs are doing for creators and decentralizing a lot of the power for that. And I think that we're still so early on, and a lot of the stuff is nonsense, but that's what happens when markets kind of come out there. And I think that long term, the implications, especially for fields like music, which have been traditionally under monetized for the artists and talent in that, the implications are tremendous.
All right, so we got to segue a little bit from Dash. You're a big sneakerhead guy, right? Obviously.
Too many shoes.
What do you think? Like, how many shoes? How much is it worth? How'd you get into it? Because you were on the Sneakerheads documentary on Netflix. You were on it? Did you produce that?
I narrated and was one of the executive producers of it.
So you're obviously the original sneakerhead. I watched some old clips, and I was like, I didn't realize it was that deep. Like, how many shoes?
Couple thousand. And it's funny, now it's funny because more kids, because now, especially because the mixtape era, like you're talking like 2000s, like a lot of that stuff is gone. So now these kids know me for sneakers. So like I'm more famous in a sneaker store than I am a music store, which is a crazy flip, right? So it's been something that I've been collecting. Again, I've been lucky and fortunate enough. My mom says like, hey, I just find a way to how to, what I like to do and figure out how to make a business out of it, which is kind of true. And I just fell in love with shoes. It was the Jordan 10 was the first pair that I had. The 11, it was hunting for that as a kid, not being able to find that really got me hooked. And ever since then, it's something. And even in high school, when I wasn't selling PS2s and Xboxes, I was selling, Jordans and Air Forces. And in Minneapolis, one of the stores out there had one of the original Nike accounts. So they'd get the craziest like Air Force Ones at the time and Jordan. So I'd go sell those for double the money or sell them to rappers. And that's how I built my collection. That's how I was able to afford buying mine. And I still have a lot of those original ones. And from that, it expanded, and we've been lucky to watch that scene from the front row, including getting involved in platforms like StockX, producing documentaries, like you said, hosting a ton of shows. So it's been a wild ride.
Do they like give you free sneakers now? Like, cause you're that guy, you know what I'm saying? Like I've always, cause like when you get to a certain stature, like people want you to plug it and you're good at it. So like, does Nike just is it only Nike, or do you mix, or mostly Nike?
I'm mostly Nike and Jordan. I'll have some Adidas and stuff, and I'll carry over to a couple other brands. Yeah, it depends on what it is. There's certain shoes, but definitely like Nike and Jordan. If you look, I mean, that's what I grew up on, and that's what I love. And you kind of look at people; they're either like Adidas or Nike people. And there's been a lot of overlap of the years with what Adidas did with even Ultra Boost and Yeezy. I had a ton of Ultra Boost and NMDs and Yeezys over the years, but my still love is like I'm wearing Nikes right now. So that's my passion. I do, and I have, over the years made some good connections and they hook things up. But I hate being that guy. Like everybody hits all the marketing people there and like, oh, hook me up and do these things. I'm like,
you're. And I said that you're not a handout guy.
No, but I'm like, and a lot of times, like, I don't want to be that guy. And I'm like, I'd rather call in my favors for something bigger. Like if I really need something,
point. Yeah, you don't want to waste it.
I probably should.
Very true.
So I have been fortunate enough. I mean, I was lucky to get like one of the best pairs that I ever got was like the Red October Yeezys because I couldn't get. So like they hooked me up with that. Like if it's moments that I really need it, I can like hit people and get things. But I try to like be low key, especially if it's something that I can get or that's not too crazy. Then I'll just buy it. It's not worth it, because you always owe somebody then too.
Yeah, so because you gotta you gotta go on the backside. Like and calling in the favor is such a good point too, because I have a decent Rolodex. It's not like yours, but like there's certain things where like I don't want to wait. Yeah, I don't want to waste it.
Waste the favor. It's something interesting. Somebody that told me that Michael Jordan said is that he won't take favors and he'd rather pay for everything from somebody because then he feels like
he has to get.
Then he's like, oh, cool. Oh, I hooked you up at my golf course, right? Yeah. Then like, oh, well, you sign this for my kid, and he's like, dude, I can't. I have an exclusive deal with Upper Deck. I don't want to like, and it puts you in an awkward position to like say no. And so it's sometimes it's better to just nothing is ever free.
So, good point. So like. dumb question, like how with your regarding your shoes, like how many pairs do you actually like put on? And that sounds funny.
Yeah, no, it's a challenge. And look, most of them are still probably.
Do you display them all or just leave them in boxes?
Probably a third of them are worn or used, maybe even a little less. Yeah, and that's the challenge, right? Like it's almost too many right now. Like I need to cut down, and I'm seriously looking at it because it becomes overwhelming. And what I've learned as you get older, like you don't want to have a million of everything. Like I'd rather have like 10 pairs. Like in my dream world, and I just say this, I'm just talking. There's no way I could cut down, but I'm like, I'd rather have 10 or 50 pairs of just the ones that I do
most exclusive, blah blah blah.
Yeah, the ones that I really like and wear and everything, right? I'm like, you don't need like, what do I need 8 TVs for in a house and 100 rooms and stuff? Like it becomes a burden. Like when you have this, if you have, like we were talking about 50 earlier, he had this mansion that was Mike Tyson's place, and I remember those guys complaining, right? Like it's
too much.
Yeah, do you want 100 or
rooms,
50? Yeah. Like you have to clean that.
Yeah.
You have to like it's not easy. The maintenance on it. It's like,
yeah,
as you know, and like things tie you down. So I'm actually like, all right, what can I do? Like I need to cut back on it, but I don't want to just like get rid of them, and I don't know. I'm trying to figure out like
you just storage unit them or something.
All right, but then they like sit there and they wear down. So I want to get them on to like I want to find a way to get them to like kids that people that are passionate about it, but I want to do it in a creative way. So I need to clean up my rooms.
Talking about slanging them, like talk to me about StockX. You involved with that?
Yeah, I was lucky. Again, and this is kind of why I've always been a believer of just doing what you love and putting yourself in these communities. And by doing that, I remember getting the call from my guy Josh, who was one of the founders of StockX, and somebody connected us and was like, hey, they're building a new platform with Dan Gilbert. And I got connected with them and was one of the first checks before it even had a name. I think StockX was the tentative name, and they were going to change the name, and they ended up not doing it. But that's like how early it was, way before it even launched. And we had no idea what it was going to do. And, now they're on track. If you just read the news, it's, it looks like, not sharing any inside information, but it looks like they're going to IPO this year. And, they just raised a bunch more money, like a multi-billion-dollar valuation. What they've done is incredible and kind of reinvent the buying experience for consumers. And I think it's bigger than just sneakers now, which is crazy to see.
Yeah, no, like I've checked it out a little bit, and like you can see your sneaker value on like 52 week. Yeah. Like it's crazy, but it makes sense because it's such a big industry, and there's obviously a need for it. So I mean, it's just. It's crazy how much stuff you're involved in. It's basically what I'm saying. I love it.
I'm fortunate
love it,
to
man.
be in the right,
it's just
the right scenarios.
It's just like, okay, talk about other stuff you get involved in.
Yeah.
Trading cards. Like you guys just had me open up a box.
Yeah, shout out to you. You're here. So downstairs we got cards and coffee.
It's awesome. Yeah. I was, born in 1984, so I'm a kid of the 90s. So like Jordan cards, like all that stuff is like part of my, history as a kid or basketball junkie. So, like, what do you think is the rise in that industry? Because it's taken off. Like, it's gone crazy.
So it's a combination of things. So one, I've always, like, if you look back, my first business actually was sports cards. When I was 8, I was selling basketball and baseball cards.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, right. Like out of my garage and like not making any real money, but that was, running around to card shops and figuring it out. So it was really my first entrepreneurial endeavor. And like many others, like the junk wax era kind of collapsed the marketplace of the 90s. And
what do you mean by junk wax?
So they basically, there was all these.
The bubblegum packs?
Yeah, there were so many cards became so popular, and they were overproduced, right?
Flooded, yeah.
And they were artificially, we were thought to think that our King Griffey Jr. 1989 Upper Deck Griffey, rookie cards were limited, and in fact they weren't. They made a ton of them, so supply and demand ultimately caught up. The card scene was able to reinvent itself and kind of come back by the advent of grading companies. So there's companies,
and all that stuff.
So there's companies like Beckett and PSA, and they'll in essence take a card, they'll grade the condition of it, and it doesn't just come from like the edges or any scrapes, but it's also based on the way that it's printed. Like, is it centered perfectly? And it's very tough to get like a perfectly centered card, believe it or not. So there's those. And then once that happens, it's serialized and in a database. So what you're able to then see is a population report and see what, in essence, like talking about stocks, what the market cap is. So for a 1986 Fleer Michael Jordan rookie card in perfect PSA 10 condition, and this is a card that was printed in 86, there's a lot of them out there. In perfect PSA 10 condition, there's about 320. It's plus or minus depending on what the pop report is. I'm just making a guesstimate, but there's only 320 of that, and that's why that card has sold. Now they're selling for around 400,000 or 500,000. They peaked at about 700,000 earlier this year. But a year ago it was 70,000, right? So what's interesting is this trend was already coming back. The same way that I saw sneakers kind of happening early on, I saw the same thing happen in the card world. And like many other industries, the pandemic accelerated something that was already inevitably going to happen. And that's because I really believe that when basketball went away and all sports went away, people weren't able to gamble, weren't able to bet. They were sitting at home. They were getting stimulus checks.
Yeah.
Cards were the only way to interact with it. And for a lot of people like me, like the nostalgia of that always came back. So it brought back those memories. And a lot of those people that grew up in the 80s, or that were born in the 80s like us, then had money and could get these things sitting at home bored. So it made it like just, it was that accelerant that it needed. So since for me, the other fun business that I do is the Skee Sports, where we help do basically power entertainment and create content with a lot of these teams. For me, it's just my excuse to be in the field at games, like honestly, right? Like
we haven't even talked about that you're the in-game DJ for the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, exactly. So that's fun, and that's again a reason for me to go back to all the games and to be on the field. And that access is what's so cool too. Like anybody can have money, but you can't do the things that I do. There's a lot of people with a lot more money than me, but they're not able to move like I have, and that's how what I'm really enjoy and like to have fun with. But all that stuff went away. I still did do the Vikings games this year, but there's no fans, and for all the other teams, like there's no fans in the building, so there's no content. We can't create with players because of the way that the COVID protocols are.
When I call games for Gonzaga, I mean we have to call guys on the phone, and they'd be standing on the court, and we were like at the middle deck. Yeah, I get it.
You're not even in the building, so like that took it away. So I was like, all right. I saw this scene happen, and I also remembered what happened with sneakers, and I saw a lot of the places that I won in the sneaker world and places that I think I could have done more in to even take a bigger piece of the slice of the pie that I could have deserved based on the knowledge that I had. So I was like, all right, let's do this for cards, especially since I wasn't on the road. I wasn't doing the sports stuff right now, as all the team activities were pretty much paused. So I looked at the sports card world and I was like, wow, this is about to happen, and realized for what I do really well, which is creating content, creating moments, bringing people in and kind of being an advocate. There wasn't a lot of great content that was appealing to the mainstream for this. There was a ton of opportunities in multiple sectors, from like breaks and the retail side to the media and content side to, so many different layers. So I was like, let's go all in. And, it was my excuse to get into sports. And like, luckily I've been able to ride that wave and have so much fun for it. And, do things like my favorite project I've probably ever done is what I'm doing right now with Topps, where I'm remixing and recreating these cards. Project 70.
Yeah, 70. I always see you post on Instagram. It looks so awesome.
So sick. So Topps basically give me the opportunity to design 20 cards, and so we're taking any iconic baseball cards, and I get to choose the players. And for all mine, it wouldn't make sense if I was just like drawing them. Like I wanted to do a real music theme for them. So the first one was Babe Ruth themed with Jay-Z. The last one was Satchel Paige, one of the greatest pitchers ever from the Negro Leagues, with Nas, Illmatic. So, and like we've got some crazy ones coming out. You can imagine the pairings, but it's all like album and music themed. And for me, it's mixing like sports and collecting and culture and music all in one. It's the perfect thing. It's just so much fun for me.
Just gives you that, that perfect outlet for you to create like you already do. But that's so cool
so fun.
Exclusive with Topps.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite project like I've done, just because of my love for all those things. And that's how, great work always happens. Like you go into it for the right reasons, and whatever happens there. And that's where I'm really been focused on building my own brand. We're doing drops now on djskee.com, and it's been going really well. It's just an excuse for me to continue to have fun with cards.
So that's so cool. Like doing the opening downstairs was nostalgic for me. I haven't opened a box of cards like in so long. I used to get
rush.
The NBA hoops. I'd get one box every Christmas, and it was like, all right, I'm gonna open one pack, maybe two today, and I'm not gonna open it all. And then you couldn't last. After a day, I was like, screw it, I'm opening them all. But it's incredible. Yeah, like it's incredible. And like seeing it come back now. And I have buddies that do they go on the streams or whatever, and then they buy a pack, and then the guy opens it and mails it to you like you guys are doing downstairs. So like it's pretty dope that it's coming back around, because it's like, man, I thought cards were dead.
Yeah. Well, look, a lot of people did, right?
Like I thought they were dead. A
lot of people did. And I've seen it was happening the past few years. There's been a few people that were like super big advocates of it, like Josh at StockX, people like Gary Vaynerchuk. Like a lot of people had been talking about and talking about this scene, and that momentum was happening regardless of any of these things in COVID, and just like it was the perfect combination.
So to finish up here pretty soon, so from Minneapolis, I got to ask you this, and I read somewhere, I didn't know if it was true. Like, do you have any Prince stories? Because I'm a huge Prince, but like,
are you? I didn't know that.
Who doesn't love Prince?
Prince is the greatest, but not a lot of people.
He's the great. He's the most talented artist, I think, of that generation, hands down, like top to bottom.
100%.
100%. It's not even close. And people don't even know. Some people don't even know he played the guitar, and you're like, dude,
best guitarist alive.
He was like Jimi Hendrix.
He's the best guitarist,
and nobody like even knows it. Like it's crazy. But like, did you work with Prince at all?
Prince was, the greatest musician I've ever seen. I agree. The best I've ever seen in my lifetime. Prince, I'm lucky I'm from the same place as him, right? We both rep Minnesota. And I interviewed one of his new artists on radio, and his team reached out. I was like, oh, it was a great interview. He's doing a secret show tonight at a club called Sayers. Sayers is actually like 2 blocks from where we are now. It's a small venue. It holds 40, 50 people. So small. So they're like, hey, Prince is doing something. Can't get anybody, no pluses. And by the way, like, I'm so jaded from going to shows. It's like you going to basketball games, right? You're like, all right. It's like so many. But I'm like, wow. Like, usually I wouldn't go, and I'm like, all right, I need plus 10. Like, I'll be bougie about it, right? Like, soon it is. I'm like, because you've really got to make it worth my while to go. Otherwise, like, I'm good. Like, but when I get there, they're like, just get there. So I'm like, not only that, and usually I show up for like 10 minutes now at this point, see it, and I'm like, all right, cool, let me go home. Get Prince. I'm like, all right, cool. I get there as soon as the doors open. I'm the first person there because I'm like, I want to sit in front. And by the way, Prince is notorious for not going on for 5 hours past the showtime. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to be here for 7 hours
But
I'm like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. So end up, of course, like sitting, almost as close as we are, like watching an entire show, just like blown away. And I ended up then writing, because I've contributed for a lot of different publications, so I ended up writing an article and sent it to Billboard. They ended up posting it on that show, and just kind of my whole experience, how I went in there, how I waited, talking about all the songs and what he played and how incredible it was. And he ended up reading it, and, connected with his manager at the time. We sat down, and she was like, yeah, this is, he'd love to do some more stuff. And we started talking, and he was like, yeah, I want you to write a book on my tour and do like a book on me for this. And I was like, what do you mean? Yeah, let's go on the road and do this. So had the opportunity to do it. It was a small run. It was so great because it was like the right size venues, House of Blues size venues. So not too big, right?
So dope to see him in that
perfect size venue to see.
Oh my God.
2 shows a night, and it was all West Coast. So it was super easy to get to, like from Vancouver all the way down to Phoenix. And going on that and seeing those shows, and 2 a night, and usually, especially when it's a tour, it's generally the same show overnight. So if you've seen one, you've seen 100. Prince every night was something different. One night,
that's amazing.
He'd come out and just so many stories. He ended up firing a sound guy, which is a whole crazy story in and of itself. But he ends up doing his own sound, so he's on stage, literally mixing and doing it while he's playing. I've never seen anything like that in my life. But one night he comes out, pop Prince. Next night, R&B Prince. Next night he comes out and you think Jimi Hendrix is on stage.
Yeah.
And doing it all on his own. It was just, I had never...
So did you compile a book? Did you write a full book?
Well, first off, I knew it wasn't going to happen because Prince is notorious on the business side for things just don't happen, right? So he's
outrageous. He didn't have a will, right? Wasn't that true? Which is crazy. Exactly. That's sad, man. I feel bad.
He thought he was invincible. Yeah, it sucks, and that's why they say it's been a lot of chaos over there. It looks like they're starting to work things out.
Just go to his kids. That's what it should be, in my opinion. But that's just me.
It's great, no kids though. So.
Oh, I thought he had kids. So well, then who the fuck goes
exactly.
to be a family?
It's crazy.
I thought he had kids, man. I would have guessed 1,000% he had kids.
Right, no kids, and wow. So it's super crazy and drama with that, but great artists, right? And this is what was Prince. I mean, Prince wrote "Slave" on his face and did these things. So when it came time to do the book, I had all this stuff, and I knew this was going to happen, by the way, right? He was like, "Oh yeah, just we want an advance, but tell him to give me I don't want $20 million advance for." Books you're not gonna make it's a book. And by the way, at the time too, notice Prince at the time is still Prince, so anybody would do it, but he's not the mega. Yeah, I mean, he's always Prince. So
yes.
I don't want to and don't want to say
I know what you mean
from that, but yeah. And by the way, nobody's getting that, even if you're the biggest, 10 biggest artists in the world. So I knew it was unrealistic, and that's what those things were. But, that experience was second to none of the fact that he took me out and believed in me, especially, he found out I was from Minneapolis. He loved the article that I wrote, and he took a chance and let me come with him on those things, and his whole team and manager was great. And, it was just such a fun, and that's why, again, I knew, I was this will probably, there's going to, I knew exactly, I knew the scenario, because you read the story, I've been through this before, but I'm I can't say no to this.
It's Prince.
I just want to go, the ability to go to all those things, so I still have all my notes. We'll see, maybe we'll put something out one
How
day.
many shows did you go to?
It was a great run. So it was like over the course of a few weeks. No, it was only like 2 weeks. It was like 2 weeks. Vancouver, Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, LA, Vegas, San Diego, Phoenix. So like small run, but like 2 shows a night. And again, each show, it was like, and each show would be so different. I literally was so excited coming out for each one.
Yeah, no, he's one of the most talented, in my opinion, of all time.
Yeah, and gone far.
Yeah,
far
no, it's a shame too with his, like we said, his catalog and his rights. Like it's got to go to his media family, in my opinion. But that's all for the lawyers and the suits and stuff like that. But it's just like wild to think it's like you have a will, man. You know what I'm saying? Like you gotta get a will, man.
Yeah, 100%, right? Like everybody out there. Yeah, it's
just go to LegalZoom. I mean,
it's
funny like that. Like just do something simple.
And that's what sucks too. Like when you see different things, like he was again drinking in this, and then you see people like in the studios, like they're doing events with artists he didn't like, and there's alcohol sponsors, and they're just like, oh, he's
that's true.
Like,
all right, well, to wrap it up, I got to tell the story how I first met you, and it was kind of crazy. So, like I said earlier, you gave me an opportunity. Roni Turioff called me one day. It was like,
shout out to Roni.
And Roni Turioff, all the Gonzaga fans, Gonzaga legend, I'm going to have him on the show. Connected with you when he was with the Lakers, or was it when he was with Miami?
He was on the Clippers.
Oh, okay. I forgot he played for the Clippers.
He played for so many teams. So he was on the Clippers, and they hit me up because it was his birthday, and they needed a DJ for his birthday party.
Oh, so that's amazing.
He had the Louis Vuitton cake that night.
He would have something like that. So he calls me. He's like, hey, I got a friend that's a smart guy that's got an opportunity. Okay, and I'm great, man. I'll do it because if Roni says you're A+, and Roni's like my guy, so I said okay. So anyway, fast forward a year, 2 years, something like that. It was Kobe's last game, the 60-point game. So I get lucky enough to get invited down by the Lakers. Like, hey, come down. Kobe wants the guys that he likes, and blah blah blah. There
wasn't many of that, so that says a lot for you to be in that category. People underestimate like.
Yeah,
he loved you guys, both of you guys, right?
He always loved the Gonzaga guys. He loved us, and it was great
because you guys were the diamonds in the rough that worked hard, right? Nothing earned, nothing given, all earned.
And we would always, like practice. I would talk shit to him and blah blah blah, and vice versa. Like he liked that shit, And like you said, if you showed up to play, like he liked you. So anyway, we go to the games. Like let's go have dinner with Scott. You can finally meet Scott. So all right, and I knew a little bit about you, but not a bunch because I wasn't like a sneaker guy and blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? So I go and you're fucking cool as shit, whatever. So Roni and I obviously get to go underneath the tunnel to the game. Yeah. And so you're walking with us. And remember, it was fucking bananas walking. We were at that restaurant. Remember how crazy it was? And Roni's like the mayor of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
and because he's so recognizable.
Recognizable. And
like you're low key, you got the long hair.
Yeah, and I had the sunglasses and I was going quick. And so everybody's like, Roni. So we get underneath, and I'll never forget, we're walking through the tunnel, and G-Eazy passed us, and then goes, hey, yo, Scott. So I'm like, okay. So like, shit, and I'm like, trying not to be a fanboy, but I'm like, fuck, that's G-Eazy. Okay, we go about 10 more minutes later, we're walking down in the tunnel before the game. Snoop Dogg passed you. What up, Scott? And I'm like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? Yeah, no, swear to God. Kendrick Lamar, it was later after the game, we're walking. Kendrick Lamar, what up, Skee? And I'm like, all right, what the fuck is going on here? And the reason I bring this up, like, you're the most humble guy I've been around. Like, I've been around a lot of people in the industry, like, as far as on the periphery, but like being in LA and being around pro sports, obviously.
Yeah. Like been around the greatest. I mean, like,
well, and you see some not so humble people, and so again, man, I just had to tell that story because it was so crazy, man, and like everybody was like stopping you, and you're just like, oh, what's up, man? Like, good to see you too. Obviously the humble self that you are, but it was just it was an interesting way to kind of first meet somebody.
That's wild. I remember, we had dinner before that night. We had a great thing, and then walked over.
And then we got to go see Kobe's 60-point game.
And I remember it started so slow. I was sitting around with Roni, and we were like, this might be bad. Like, it started off bad. Then we went back to the family room right before the game ended because you guys were going to walk out on court. So we watched it with the whole fam and everybody in that little room, and just watching when he was going for those last ones. They're like, no,
it was such a storybook way, and obviously, I don't want to bring up the sad part. Everybody knows it. So it was just awesome to be around you, man. And I appreciate you taking the
course.
time, man. You're a man of many hats.
Man, this has been
awesome,
great.
man.
It's fun talking. We got to do this more, man. Thank you so much for coming down. I didn't, next time I got to come up to Spokane.
Coeur d'Alene, I'm telling you, come out to the resort. I said
Man.
Lake Cabin, my lake place. Come out, man.
Let's go. Let's go. I'm in.
For real. You could do one of your events, live events from my
I'm
doc.
excited.
You know what I'm saying?
It feels good. I did my first live show since the pandemic this weekend with people in it. Like I've done a lot of virtual.
Oh,
ones,
yeah.
Felt good. I'm excited. Let's do some stuff.
Again, man, appreciate it. It's always good to see you, man. I appreciate it.
Of course, you're welcome here anytime. Thank
DJ
you so much for the
Skee.
love and support, man, and being the guy that you are and putting on for us. So go
appreciate
Zags! I'm basically
Yes.
like a Zags fan now, but not only with you and like Roni, but with all my Minnesota guys
You
coming
got
there now.
Jalen,
So.
you got Jalen Suggs, and then Chet, and
right?
go Zags, man. We
We got to do some entertainment there now next year, so let's make that happen.
Shit, tell me who to call, and I'll get you in.
Let's go.
Your record speaks for itself. I'm not saying, but like I'll be the gatekeeper. I'll let you.
Let's
you
go.
know what
No,
I mean?
I need you, man. Come on, let's go.
All right, man. I appreciate it.
My brother, great seeing you.
Yep. Thank you.
The Perimeter with Adam Morrison is brought to you in partnership with Speak Studios and Mercedes of Spokane.